innovative system for molecular diagnosis of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And it's also pertinent to state here that the Nigerian TB 14 sites. Upon setting up this, we met a lot of challenges. Some of them include the regular challenges which we expected and those that were not expected. Lack of maintenance and calibration support for the machine itself, replacement modules, which is actually being done by only a single company in Nigeria here, known as SYMPOSIUM, coordination of procurement and supply chain systems for some of the cartridges and every other consumable that is needed, unstable power supply, as you would expect, lack of trained personnel to man the machines, and long instrument downtimes and significant underutilization of testing capacity. So in 2017, we set up, started implementation of a program or an intervention which we tag Intensified Remote Support System. And this was actually aimed at improving utilization of the GeneSpart machine for TB case detection and also creating demand. Also to demonstrate and understand how program strategies could improve indicators, efficiency, and outcomes. So one of the things we did in this were to set up few strategies on how to negate some of these challenges. First, we provided real-time troubleshooting support to trained personnel at the expert sites to make sure that problems encountered by personnel outside are being handled in real time. Also, we provided backup modular procurement for our sites. Another thing, as the machine requires an annual calibration, we provided support for these modular calibrations so that we can't be waiting for a long time, or our sites wouldn't be waiting for a long time before the modules are calibrated. And once the modules are not calibrated, any results you're getting from there, you cannot actually rely on those results. Secondly, fourthly, due to the power failures we could experience all around Nigeria, and also understanding that the machine is very sensitive to light, we set up backup power systems to make sure we negate any uninterrupted power supply. So we provided things like inverters, solar panels, and all that to make sure that there is constant power supply for the GeneSpart machines to work at the different sites. And at the same time, the TB diagnostic cascade was also strengthened through a robust clinic lab interface, which was aimed at creating demand for GeneSpart testing. Secondly, the scale-up of TB screening activities to identify TB presumptive for subsequent laboratory examination was also done. If you understand how the TB cascade flows from clinics, for the PLHIVs, every PLHIV is expected to be screened at every clinic time he has with a clinician to using symptom screening. If any of them clients respond affirmatively to any of the screening symptoms, that person is classified as a presumptive and then moved to GeneSpart testing. And after that, treatment is expected to continue from there if the result turns out to be positive. So we generated the data I'm going to show here from the routinely collected, aggregated program data. First here, you could see at the beginning of the intervention in 2017, we were having about 8,000 samples tested, sputum samples tested. But if you look at 2018, after this intervention has kicked off, we seem to have about almost 14,000, which represents a 70% increase in sputum samples being tested at these 14 sites. Secondly, if you look at TB case detection itself, as at 2017, before the implementation of the intervention, we were detecting about 1,300 TB cases, but after these interventions were introduced, we could see about 2,000, representing a 48% increment in TB case detection. Then when we look at the, because the machine itself is able to identify a monoresistance, rifampicin resistance. So if we look at the trend there, it might seem as if the resistance, rifampicin resistance detected seems to be on the decline percentage-wise, but this actually is not statistically significant. Another one, we talked about instrument downtime. These are times lost when the machine is not functional because of either no calibration, or maybe electricity, or maybe modular supply and all that. But upon implementation of these interventions, we could see we reduced the instrument downtime from 256 days per annum cumulatively for the 14 machines to about 112, which is less than 50% reduction in instrument downtime. And as we continue to move forward, we also recognize the different challenges and also the ongoing challenges which we are also planning on how to surmount. One of them is, if you look at, consider the minimum expected number of tests for a single 4 modular gene expert machine, is expected that each machine should be able to test 2,500 to 3,500 samples per annum. And we are still at 14,000, which represents about 1,000 per expert machine there. So that means we are still at about 30 to 40% capacity utilization for these machines. Part of what may be contributing to this is the perception people have about the military facilities. Either maybe they don't see the military to be playing a bigger role in the health system, or they are even afraid of accessing the military facilities because of maybe the security arrangements at the entrances or within the barracks. So, but we've been working with some state partners and private sectors to improve access to them, to our sites, for sample referral through a well-coordinated mechanism. So, in conclusion, we believe that with a focused, comprehensive and multifaceted implementation strategy, we have been able to improve expert sputum testing by 70%, and TB case detection by 48%, and at the same time reducing by more than 50% the instrument downtimes. We also believe that further service improvements are expected in the coming periods following the strengthened collaboration we have with some state partners and private sectors now. And finally, I would like to acknowledge some of my colleagues who were part of this and other collaborators from the Nigerian Ministry of Defense Health Implementation Program from our headquarters in Maryland, USA. Thank you.
Uganda, so we have experience from Uganda. She's Dr. Nagini. She's going to talk about high mortality amongst male and expert negative presumptive TB patients who are empirically treated in Uganda.
Which is a program run by AFREhealth University. I'm very privileged to be here this afternoon to present to you findings of our work on outcomes following clinical diagnosis and preventive treatment among HIV-infected patients who are clinically suspected to have TB, but eventually turn out to have no pathological confirmation of TB. That's on conventional tests such as smear microscopy and gene expert. So we know that TB is the leading cause of death among HIV co-infected individuals worldwide, and it's responsible for more than 26% of all AIDS-related deaths. And you all agree with me that TB is often underdiagnosed among HIV-infected patients, especially in resource-limited settings. And this is mainly because the conventional TB tests that normally rely on sputum often lacks sensitivity in diagnosing TB among HIV-infected patients, and this normally results into high frequencies of misdiagnosis and consequences of complications, especially death. And for clinicians, you know that a very large proportion of patients who are HIV infected are started on TB treatment based on clinical decision making. And the reasons for empiric decision making in initiating patients on TB treatment are usually factors that cannot be easily modified. For example, at the time of presentation, these patients are usually very, very sick with severe symptoms, so that any delays in making a decision on treatment may result into complications such as death. But most important of all is that we lack rapid and accurate diagnostics that can be used to diagnose TB. And because of that, clinicians are left with no option but to initiate patients on TB treatment based on clinical judgment. So because of the inability to confirm TB in HIV-infected patients by clinicians using the available sputum-based examinations like smear microscopy and GeneXpert, many clinicians continue to rely on clinical judgment to initiate TB treatment among patients. And this has resulted in a high frequency of empiric TB treatment and clinical diagnosis among HIV-infected patients. And this is indeed true because from our previous work in an urban HIV clinic, we found that 1 in every 3 smear-negative HIV-infected patients was initiated on TB treatment empirically. So even if we know that this is a very common practice, empiric TB treatment and clinical diagnosis is very common, there's limited data in this field. And it's because of this limited data that we find that many national TB programs have actually been reluctant to endorse or even help clinicians in managing patients clinically, guiding them on how to perform clinical diagnosis and to make decisions on TB diagnosis. So there's a clear need to evaluate clinical diagnosis and empiric TB treatments in settings where it's commonly applied. And as part of the evaluation, we need to know what exactly happens to these patients who are empirically initiated on TB treatment. Do they improve? Do they die? Because if they improve, then that means that this patient is likely had TB when empiric TB treatment was started. And if they don't improve, it could be other forms of other illnesses that are causing the symptoms. And such information would act as indicators for the accuracy and benefits for clinical diagnosis and empiric TB treatment as part of TB management among HIV patients. And that kind of information will not only help clinicians in their approach in clinical diagnosis and empiric TB treatment, but will also guide national TB programs as they go through formulating guidelines or even revising their guidelines in TB diagnosis and treatment. So we set to evaluate clinical diagnosis and empiric TB treatment among HIV-infected patients who are clinically suspected to have TB, but eventually have no bacteriological confirmation of TB. And specifically, I wanted to look at outcomes and also non-TB etiologies in this population of patients. So we designed a prospective study in which participants were enrolled and followed up every month for 6 months. We estimated a sample size of 300 to be adequate to answer the objectives. And for all the participants, we included both inpatients and outpatients. From the inpatients who are from the National Referral Hospital, that is Mulago, and the outpatients were from AFREhealth Center for Clinic in Kampala. So HIV-infected patients in these clinics and hospital were assessed for eligibility, whereby a patient was said to be eligible if they are 18 years and above. These patients had to give informed consent to be part of the study, and these patients had to be clinically suspected to have TB. And all these patients had to have a negative sputum smear and or GeneXpert if available. These are the ones we are calling no bacteriological confirmation of TB. So in summary, consenting patients were screened for eligibility, and those who are found eligible underwent study-related procedures, including taking targeted medical history and examination, medical records were reviewed to find what decision a clinician had made. We took study-specific samples, including blood, sputum, and urine, mainly to confirm TB and other non-TB etiologies in these patients. And all patients had a monthly follow-up up to 6 months to determine their survival outcome, to see whether there have been changes in symptoms from the time when a clinical decision was made, and then also if there is any other diagnosis that was made, and also records were reviewed for any tests that were done. And this data was used to analyze for the two objectives. So what did we find? So basically this was a relatively young population with a median age of 37, and majority were females. And significantly we had a significant difference between the inpatients and outpatients, whereby the inpatients were sicker, as seen by the BMI, they were likely to have fever and were less likely to be taking ART. But important to note is that the inpatients had a significantly more advanced HIV, as seen by the median CD4 of 84 compared to the outpatients who had a median CD4 of 370. In terms of empiric TB treatment and the lab results that were obtained, we found that out of the 277 patients that we analyzed, 21% were empirically initiated on TB treatment. This was quite high. And in terms of lab results, despite this being smear negative and TNET-SPAT negative, about 15 patients also had culture positive TB, and some of them had tuberculous mycobacteria. Also, aerobic blood cultures were positive in 4% of patients, but also another important point to note is that a very large proportion of patients also had a positive serum gram, up to 14%, and urine lung was also positive in about 6%. So this is just a summary of how the blood cultures looked like, but here I wanted you to note that we also found patients who had positive cryptococemia, as in their blood was evident for Cryptococcus pneumoniae. And also we found gram-negative septicemia in quite a number of patients, about 3 of these patients, and these were really undiagnosed by the primary treating clinicians. In terms of mortality, looking at the 277 patients that we saw, it's interesting to note that we had a very high mortality, up to 33% of the 277 patients who are negative actually died. And from this, you can see that almost half of the inpatients had died at 6 months. And when you look at the group that received empiric TB treatment, again, 35% of all the patients who received empiric TB treatment died. But significantly is that among the inpatients, almost half of inpatients that received empiric TB treatment actually died. When we further analyzed this data in terms of setting, as expected, we found that inpatients actually had a very high risk of death, up to 8 times compared to the outpatients. It's not surprising, but what I wanted you to know is that majority of these patients died within the first 3 months of presenting to the clinic. On further analysis, when we tried to analyze mortality between the group that was empirically treated and the group that did not receive empiric TB treatment, we also found that actually empiric TB treatment did not reduce the risk of death in this population of patients. So this we think is really, really important, because empiric TB treatment is a common practice, but it doesn't actually protect. Just to go through what I said, that in this population of smear negative and TNET-SPAT negative patients, clinical diagnosis and empiric TB treatment is actually quite common in about 21%. And despite them being smear negative and TNET-SPAT negative, 5%, more than 5% also had culture positive TB. And a large proportion of these patients also had a positive serum CRAG. We also found undiagnosed cryptococcemia and gram-negative septicemia, which was not diagnosed by the primary treating clinicians. And also important to note is that despite the high rates of empiric TB treatment among these patients by the clinicians, there is still very high mortality, especially among the inpatients, up to almost half of the patients. And most of these patients died within the first 3 months. And also important to note is that almost half of the inpatients who received empiric TB treatment actually died within the 3 months of presentation after presentation to the whole facilities. So based on these findings, we think that as the national TB programs develop their guidelines in smear negative and gene expert negative HIV infected patients, they should include lab tests that will try to identify non-TB etiologies in this group of patients in order to reduce this very high mortality that we see. And we also want to think or to recommend that serum crab is done for all HIV infected patients, especially the inpatients, looking at our results. I know WHO recommends that serum crab is done on all patients who have low CD, who are less than 100%. But based on our findings, it's important to note that most of these clinics and hospitals do not have CD4 counts at the bedside. So the clinicians end up not doing serum crab tests because they are limited by presence of serum crab, presence of CD4. As I conclude, for this study we are going ahead to really confirm the etiology of death in this population. So we plan autopsy studies to determine the actual causes of death in this population of patients that will help to guide clinicians. So I'd like to end by acknowledging the people listed here. My mentor, Professor Harriet Miranda, should be here. I haven't seen her, but she's right there. And my sponsors, the Nurture team, and the Infectious Diseases Institute that have supported my research. Thank you so much.
My name is Giovanni Chileka from the University of Zimbabwe. I teach in the Department of Community Medicine or other colleges, College of Public Health. I'm going to present to you our findings on how lack of access to care and human behavior influence the transmission of TB in low-income settings. I'll just briefly go through the introduction, the methods, discussion, and aerosolized droplet nuclei. The major drivers are those typical epidemiological triangle where environmental factors like overcrowdedness, poverty, human susceptibility, like poor comorbidity in the case of TB, and pathogen-specific factors like virulence, and then lately there's been a lot of discussion in TB migration, both internal and cross-border. Briefly about the burden of TB in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is one of the countries where the burden of disease has been progressively declining by almost 4% per year. However, it is important to note that the mortality has remained significantly high, more than 10%, and according to WHO, mortality and other poor treatment outcomes for TB must not exceed 10%. In addition to increased mortality, there is evidence that more than 20% of the disease burden in the whole country is actually limited to two major cities, Harare, which is the capital city, and then Bulawayo, which is the second capital city, which is mainly the industrial city in Zimbabwe. There are several tools that have been used to describe transmission of TB, mainly genotypic tools, whole genome sequencing, epidemiological linkages, where we do contact tracing and we link a specific case to secondary case to a primary case, and geospatial techniques. Geospatial methods have been used to basically describe the effect of internal migration and migration to TB transmission. So, I said the two major cities contribute to about 20% of all the TB cases in Zimbabwe. What could be causing that? In 2008, the country implemented a program which they called Operation Restore Order. That program was basically aimed at removing all the slums, and those people were moved on the outskirts of the city where they either settled legally or illegally. In those outskirts of the city, there were no health services, so they still continued to access services in the main metropolitan city. So our question was, the observed localized TB transmission in Harare and Bulawayo, was it propagating TB burden in the whole country? And we aim to describe the geospatial patterns of TB in Harare for 2011 and 2012, and estimate the presence of hotspot transmission. Hotspot transmission basically means that there is active transmission, more like an acute infection as described elsewhere in France and China. We did a retrospective study where we collected data from an e-register that is kept in Harare City of TB cases. We wanted to collect data from 2008 when the Operation Restore order started, so that we are able to measure what was the transmission patterns before, at the time of the operation and later on. But I'll explain the limitations later on. And then we also collected demographic data, which sort of explains or assists in explaining the distribution of disease. So we use Google Earth and geographical sensing system to map cases and analyze data using AFREhealth software. This study was approved by the Medical Research Council of Zimbabwe. So what are the key findings? I think this is a slightly busy slide, but what is important to note is that most of the characteristics in terms of age, gender, were uniform between 2011 and 2012. In 2012, there were slightly younger people affected by TB compared to 2011. So we first compared the TB prevalence by SEBA. The Harare City is divided into 12 administrative districts, and within each district there are several SEBAs. So we sort of compared whether the occurrence of TB prevalence of SEBA, was it just random or it was significant. So it was, we used global models to differentiate whether occurrence TB between SEBAs was random or non-random. What we observed was that the SEBAs in the southwestern districts showed a lot of clustering, and we concluded that the occurrence was not random. The red circle in 2011, this is the central district where most patients were being settled outside the perimeter of Harare City, where continued to access services for TB and other health services. We also, within the SEBA, we then use modern states to sort of see if is there a lot of clustering. And clustering, what it explains is that the cases that are occurring within a suburb, they are related. It's not just like cases that are coming from elsewhere and settling in that. And the picture, I'm not sure what happened for 2012, maybe it's technology. But it's the same picture for 2012. The southwestern districts were commonly affected. And then we did I think there's a map there which didn't download, which shows some hotspot areas, but nevertheless the hotspot picture demonstrated that those same districts were observing hotspot. Hotspot basically just means there's active transmission between cases. So to compare one case to other cases that are being generated by that single case. So these are the SEBAs in the Western District that were commonly exhibiting hotspot phenomena. So what do we learn from this? I think this was the first study in Harare City that used that demonstrated that TB transmission does occur in hotspot phenomena. I think the first study to describe TB occurring in epidemic form was the study in France at a primary school and the famous Tugela Ferry, where MDR TB is presumed to have been transmitted from KwaZulu-Natal to other parts of the world. Secondly, this study also noted that epidemiological facility data may not be proper in terms of planning, because it underestimates the effect of environmental capacity, which sort of promotes TB transmission, and of course the impact on design of interventions to interrupt transmission. So what are the public health implications of our findings? We know that internal migration was a significant cause of active TB transmission in Harare, and I think it started in China, which was published in 2018, also made that observation. And TB transmission in public places may actually be a cause of concern. We know that the standard practice in terms of contact investigation is that you only concentrate on close contacts. Those people who are close contacts of the primary cases are the ones that we go and investigate, ask questions, screen for TB. But we think we should put more effort in trying to look at where does this person work, where does the person normally spend most of his or her time, so that we include those in our TB control activities and not necessarily limit those who are household contacts. Our study limitations were intended to collect data. In fact, we collected data from 2008 to 10, and for those who got a good history about Zimbabwe, that was the time that in 2008 we had this massive cholera outbreak that killed more than 4,000 people. Most of the records were missing information on physical address, which we wanted to use to map cases. And we also have wanted to do, because this was a retrospective study, we also have wanted to, if it was a prospective study, we have followed up also contacts and actually see if most of those cases that were occurring in the hotspot home were actually household contacts or people that the cases were interacting as a result of poor treatment and then prolonged exposure of other cases to patients who were not adequately receiving treatment. So we recommend that whenever we are doing surveillance programs, we should combine both epidemiological and geospatial techniques, and that the city of Harare should design appropriate interventions that will address access of TB services among all populations and ensure early case detection with appropriate treatment to interrupt transmission. I can assure you that Harare City won the TB-RICH grant in 2007-8, and they implemented, they rolled out the GeneXpert technology, and they've been, the TB instances in Harare City has actually been coming down because access to diagnosis has been improved. And we recommend that contact investigation should not be limited to close household contacts only, because we think that those contacts outside the household may actually be contributing significantly to TB transmission, where there's low access to health services and there's increased internal migration. I would want to acknowledge the City of Harare, University of Stellenbosch, Leighton Foundation for funding, and Welcome Trust. Thank you very much.
I'm here to present my abstract on plasma levels of interferon gamma and tuberculosis factor. These are my outlines. Tuberculosis is an infectious disease with a global public health importance. The global prevalence of Mycobacterium tuberculosis infection is about 32%, and in Nigeria it is about 27%. Like we had in the morning, making Nigeria one of the country with higher burden of tuberculosis. First in Africa, number 6 in the world. The Mycobacterium tuberculosis infections are effectively transmissible through aerosol from the lungs, which may be asymptomatic and latent in nature. So about 5 to 10% of the infected people later progresses to active TB. each year, and pulmonary TB is the most common tuberculosis that we have. So on average, it is estimated that a person with active TB can infect between 10 to 15 individuals per year. So that means if you have 100 people with TB, active TB, we are likely to have about 1,500 or 1,000 people being infected in a year. That is 1,000 to 1,500 people being infected in a year. So this makes tuberculosis one of the infectious diseases that should be of great concern to us. Tuberculosis progression is associated with immune status among other factors. The host protective immune response against M. tuberculosis is mediated by cellular immunity, in which certain cytokines and T-alpha-1 cells are very important. Among these T-alpha-1 cytokines are tumor necrosis factor, TNF-alpha, and interferon gamma. And these have been identified as the most important agents of the antimicrobacterial cytokine cascade. This is as a result of the formation as well as the maintenance of the granuloma, which is mediated by TNF-alpha acting synergistically with interferon gamma in the activation of macrophages to produce the effector molecules. So consequently, it implies that these two cytokines are very important in the pathology of M. tuberculosis and early diagnosis and treatment of tuberculosis infection. So therefore, in this study, the differentiating potentials of TNF-alpha and interferon gamma were assessed in drug-resistant tuberculosis, DRTB, and drug-sensitive tuberculosis, DSTB, and these are compared with uninfected, apparently healthy individuals in Ibadan, Nigeria. Materials are mentioned. These 34 apparently healthy, uninfected individuals. So a non-probability convenient sampling technique was adopted, that is, as the patient comes to the clinic, we recruit them into the study, they give their consent as well. So the inclusion criteria include male and female between the ages of 18 and 70 years, as well as those people that signed the informed consent form. While specifically for case group, we have the DSTB and the DRTB participants. That is, you have to be either DSTB or DRTB before you can be fit into the study. But for the control, for those that undergo the tuberculosis skin test, you have to be such as diabetes were excluded from the study. Then those people that refuse to give their consent as well. The laboratory procedure and samples collection, we have 5 ml of whole bloods being collected into EDTA bottles. And this was spin at 3,000 revolutions per minute to get the plasma, which was stored at minus 20 degrees Celsius Celsius on the day of analysis. The tuberculin testing was performed with 5 international unit purified protein derivative injected intradermally into the volar surface of the forearm, and the results were evaluated 72 hours later. So if the skin reactions gives over 10 ml, you'll be excluded. That means you are positive for tuberculosis. While if it gives less than 5 ml, then you'll be included into the study. The data was analyzed using Crystal Wallis, and man-weekly test was also used for the analysis. Our results: TNF-alpha and the interferon gamma were analyzed, and we discovered that in our DSTB participants, we have TNF-alpha being lower compared with DRTB and the control participants, while interferon gamma was higher in DSTB compared with DRTB and control participants. So while we do the man-weekly test, we found out that there is significant difference between DRTB and control and DSTB and control as stated. So in this study, the lower level of TNF-alpha that was observed in DSTB participants may be due to 1, the pre-motor role of this cytokine, which act on a wide variety of cells, leading to the activation of macrophages, T lymphocytes, and dendritic cells that are central to microbacterial destruction, Then two, it may be as a result of the stimulation of TNF-alpha on immune cells migration to the infection site, contributing to the granuloma formation that is capable of controlling the disease progression. Similarly, the lower level may be as a protective mechanism against cell lysis and death by necrosis and apoptosis, respectively, thereby preventing immunopathological responses in tuberculosis. So this is because TNF-alpha is a major mediator of destruction of the pulmonary tissue, and elevated levels of TNF-alpha is related to excessive inflammation with necrosis. So these findings agree with the study of Basigna and colleagues, where lower levels of TNF-alpha were reported in DSTB compared with DRTB, but it contradicts the other studies where higher levels of TNF-alpha was found in TB patients compared with control. So interferon gamma, which is a chief cytokine that is involved in the protection of immune responses against microbacterial infection, was found to be higher in DSTB because it may be as a compensatory mechanism, actually, to the lower TNF-alpha that is found in this particular group. So since TNF-alpha and interferon gamma act synergetically, and TNF-alpha stimulate the production of reactive nitrogen intermediates, thereby mediating the tuberculostatic function of the macrophages. So this finding is also supported by the work of Rizet et al., who reported higher levels of interferon gamma in confirmed TB participants. So our conclusion, so we can say that TNF-alpha production during M. tuberculosis infection, especially in drug-sensitive tuberculosis, is tightly controlled by the host defense system. So this is to attain optimal expression of the cytokine so as to control the tuberculin bacillus and prevent immunopathological responses in people with tuberculosis. While interferon gamma was shown to provide protection against microbacterial tuberculosis infection in TB patients. Like I said, it's an ongoing research, and we intend to do human leukocytes antigen typing as well as the oxidative stress biomarker, since TNF-alpha and interferon gamma, they work together to induce the oxidative pathway in which the oxidative stress help in the immunological parameters to kill the macrophages and to kill the microbacterium that is being generated. So my acknowledgement goes to you, MFJ PIs, my mentors, Professor Ariola, Professor Daibo, Dr. Mega in absentia, Dr. Osman from the Demer Foundation, Belgium, who facilitated our recruitment at Jericho Chest Clinic, and Dr. Taliatu for recruitment at Jericho Chest, as well as Dr. Eden for his technical support. These are my references. Thank you.
The title I see here, Determinant of Tuberculosis Preventive Therapy Completion among PLHIV selected ART sites in Oyo and Ogun State, or the southwest Nigeria. And I want to declare at this level that we do not have any financial relationship or any form of conflict of interest that needs to be disclosed. As background, Global Tuberculosis Report in 2018 has it that in 2016, TPT coverage was between 2.4 and 73 among newly enrolled PLHIV, with completion rate of 40 to 46% in high TB body countries globally. And also in Nigeria, TBT coverage in 2016 was put at 29%, and of course invariably low completion rate. So there are a lot of evidences showing that poor TBT uptake and completion rate with their shared morbidity and mortality remain a major challenge among PLHIV, especially in low income settings. So we assessed factors that determine TPT completion among PLHIV in selected ART sites in Oyo and Ogun State. And this is what we did. We employed cross-sectional study design and randomly selected 8 ART sites, factoring the primary level of care, secondary level of care, and even tertiary facilities in those 2 states. And a systematic sampling technique was employed to select study population from sampling frame containing all patients that we placed on isoniazid preventive therapy from October 1st, 2017 to 31st December 2018. And this has a reason. Our new grant, the grant we are in, started 1st of October 2017, and that's when we started collecting this data that I'm trying to make sense of it here in this conference. And we stopped at December 31st because we want to include all patients that have completed INH, and of course 6 months on INH they will complete around June for those that were initiated in December 2018. Then overall, a total of 1,765 records were reviewed and their data analyzed using SPSS. And we, at the bifurcate level, we consider chi-square statistics, and at multivariate level, we employed logistic regression to make sense and determine what are the original factors and what are the predictors of TPT completion. And these are our findings. We found out that most of our patients, they are more than 30 years of age. More than close to 93% of them are above 30 years of age. No, mean age was 42 years. And majority of them are females, about 76%. While, of course, the study is conducted in southwest Nigeria, where predominantly Yorubas. So that's why majority of our respondents, they are Yorubas. And most of our, 60% of our patients, they are public or civil servants. While about 31, or approximately 32% were either trader or farming. And approximately 98% of our respondents, they are on ART, they are ART experienced. While 94% of them are retained on the ART, which is very, very important. And this, for TPT completion rate, we found out that in selected facilities, 89% of respondents completed tuberculosis even within 6 months of initiation. However, some still completed at 7 months and at 8 months. However, any patient that completed after 8 months, we have to start all over again. And any patient that has break that is more than 2 months, they have to start all over again. But they are very few in this study. And reasons for non-completion of INH prophylaxis, as we found, transfer out major factor. About 45% of patients that did not complete INH is because they move, and some of them move even without notifying the clinician. While adherence, another major factor, 34%. And we look at some variables like ethnicity, occupation, ART experience, or retention on ART, and we found out that all of these factors, they were associated with TPT completion in the study. And further analysis at the multivariate level, employing the logistic regression, we found out that traders and farmers were 4 times likely to complete TPT compared to patients that were public servant or civil servant. Probably they were not, the public servants were not given permission. I mean, they couldn't get permission to go for their services as they wanted. Unlike individual doing trading, there's their personal business, they can easily dash out and have access to the services. And in conclusion, this study demonstrated, one, TPT completion rate was relatively high in the surface states. And patients working in government establishments or other private sectors have lower likelihood of completing TPT compared to self-employed patients like artisan and farmer. So ethnicity, ALT experience, ALT retention were significantly associated with TPT completion, although none of these factors, were significant at multivariate level. So our recommendations: 1, counseling on the benefit of TPT, especially among ALT naive patients and public servants living with HIV, will improve TPT coverage. And program encourages multi-month scripting and distribution of INH prophylaxis for public servants living with HIV due to their tight schedule. Now we start giving up to 2 months at a time, 3 months, as their ALT is scheduled. And we made use of these references. Thank you very much for your listening.
From the Nigerian family, I just want to ask, are you involved in the national hospital?
We need a microphone.
University of Abuja teaching hospital, whether
Microphone.
okay, sorry, I just want to know, because you say one of the major constraints is the location of the center, being in Mogadishu Cantonment. And the teaching hospital at Bedalada is open to everybody. And I believe some certain mission hospitals like Bina Hospital in Nasarawa, how are you considering those ones as far as to increase the percentage capacity utilization of the gene expert machine? Because you did highlight that one as the major challenge, one of the major challenges you have. The other question is, please, the lady for Ghana, please, I'm not from my own area, because I don't have anything to do with CV. You mentioned serum crack. How may I heard it for the first time? Please, I'd like to dedicate it. Thank you.
So I just want to find out, did you consider aspergillosis among your patients that are treated for pericardial TB? Because actually we are seeing this kind of cases now very common, probably the cryptococcus infection that we are seeing among the fungal infection patients.
Thank you. I have a question. My name is Peter from Lesotho. I have a question from Olajile. He said that most of the people who do not finish their TB prevention therapy are public servants. So what are their perspectives? Why are they not taking the treatment? Did we do any qualitative study to assess their perspectives? And my second question goes to Nagiani. And she said that almost half of hospitalized patients are at risk of dying. So I want her to clarify more on that one. Why are they more risk unlike the outpatients? Thank you.
I have one big question and clarification. From the first presenter, we all know that getting proper sample will determine the outcome of what we are doing. I want to be sure, to confirm, if you actually collected sputum and not saliva. Because sometimes some people will give saliva and they will say it is sputum. Please, you have to clarify that. And for the second presenter, you found out that there are higher CD4 counts in outpatients. Can you please throw more light on that? And for the third presenter, you found that 11 to 19 years of age, about more of empty. we want more clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stanley. The increase in the numbers of TB detected, is it just because of the time the machines were working, or is the actual rate increased? Are the machines more sensitive after what you put in? The second question is, have you costed what this means so that other programs can emulate this? What does it cost to do what you do?
Dr. Kunku.
The way I understand the networking of GSP, I just want to find out whether the ones in the military are part of the national network. And in which case, I'm sure the samples can come from some other place. But I think the other comment I want to make is that a lot of what might led to this implementation that you evaluated are lessons that we should learn going forward, so that we can actually put them in place before we start. Because a lot of them are health system issues that we're so familiar with. And we don't want to wait to see that they don't work before we need to implement them. So I think one of the lessons I will take from this is that if somebody's going to set up these kind of things before now, they should factor in all these health system issues that will affect optimal implementation in the first place.
The last question will be from the
last one, the last presenter. Now there's a clarification related to the sampling. She had this statement saying that her participants were about 30 and had the random sampling. I wonder how comes now you randomize the sampling, the participants will be about 30. And another point I would like to get clarification is the result indicated that about those completed TPT were about 89. This is a scientific study. What does it have to do with about?
so the
Beautiful questions. The first question you asked was if we are involving.
we need a microphone.
If we're involving University of Abuja in Babalada, the Bingham University in Nassau. University of Abuja has actually our sites are not only in Abuja. We have sites around the country. But around the country, when I showed our rollout plan, you see some of the places listed there, even though I was using codes of the name of the military sites. But our defense reference lab is the one situated in Abuja at the Mogadishu cantonment. And it is part of the national sample referral network for viral load samples. So that one serves a lot of places within Nigeria. Samples are being shipped to the place for viral load. Then we also have a gene expert machine domiciled in the clinic there that is expected to also be receiving samples both from the clinic there and possible referrals. So, Guacolata you were talking about has a gene expert machine supported by IHV, Institute of Human Virology, under CDC support as well. So they don't have any need to refer samples to us, or we refer to them. But those we expect to maybe refer samples to our site, maybe using it as a hub, are some of the small facilities that have no gene expert capabilities and that cannot possibly manage some of the delicate aspects and costings, and might result from having a gene expert machine at that site. And also some private establishments can also decide to be referring samples to those sites. Let me give you an example. In Lagos State now, Lagos State government started a program, and we are working with them earnestly on that, so that private clinics will have access to our sites. And we make an arrangement so that the bikers bringing their samples will be granted such an access to take their samples to our lab. The samples will be analyzed and then results sent to them as well. I think maybe that's for your question. The second one is proper sample. Okay, whether we were collecting sputum or actual or saliva. When a sample is collected, lab scientists or technicians at site, the lab there, they are trying to know when to what is sputum and be able to differentiate it from saliva. And when you collect the saliva, definitely you're not going to get any reasonable result. And for children, that's why it's a little more difficult for children because they don't really produce sputum. So if you're trying to force children to produce sputum, what you're going to get is mostly saliva. So we have that difficulty getting sputum sample for children. So most times it's either they are treated empirically depending on the clinician's decision, or X-ray is also used for treating children for TB. Then this third question is whether the number of cases we saw here increased because the sensitivity of the machine improved, or it was actually improved in case detection. It didn't affect the sensitivity of the machine. It was actually, if you look at when the number of samples you're able to collect increases, you'll have a higher likelihood of detecting more TB positive cases from all those presumptives you collected their samples. And for costing, you talked about also, to tell you the truth, we've never really looked at the costing, or maybe try to break it down per unit patient, what it costs. I think that's something we actually also need to do to see the cost feasibility for others to implement this. Then the last question here. The last question talks about if our expert machines are within the national sample referral network. There is a national sample referral network for sputum samples, but I tell you categorically that referral network hasn't been working as expected, especially for the non-gene expert sites or the standalone dot sites. It may possibly be happening where there are co-location of HIV clinic and then sputum or the DOS clinic, but for the standalone site, it's not working at the moment. So our sites are part of the referral networks, but receiving samples because of the network I said is not functioning well. A lot of samples do not get to our site. We had a meeting last week, and this meeting was based on this issue of sample referral network. The national coordinator was at that meeting with us. A lot of issues were raised why this has not been working. One, it was built on the backbone of the HIV program for viral load samples to be referred to the PCR laboratory site, but you cannot exactly use that same system for the TB program. So what we are trying to work out is to make sure that we create a system where the TB program sample referral system will work and work efficiently, and not lumping it up together with the viral load sample system.
Okay, Dr. Yes, Dr.
So there are two possibilities that our MTCT program is evaluating towards to correct that. We are at almost like 0.1% transmission between mother and child transmission. And it started early before the National Art Program way back in 2004. We think this would be a cohort of people who were born with HIV who probably were just more likely to get TB. The second potential reason is that because some of these children were staying outside on the outside of the city where the services were not readily available. And this is the age that moves a lot. We assume that the movement from where they lived to where the TB services were could have been restricted. So these are people who are moving. They move, they go to school, they are the ones who during weekends are doing other chores for life. But however, I think it's something that we may also need to interrogate. Mr. Chair, am I allowed to ask? To ask my colleague?
No, let's have those answers first. Sorry about that.
Someone asked about cerebral. So, in advanced HIV, one of the commonest opportunistic infections that we have is cryptococcal meningitis. And for someone to have cryptococcal meningitis, it's actually one of the worst diseases one can have because it's a severe headache. So we try to screen patients before they can go into the stage of cryptococcal cryptococcal meningitis. So one of the screening tests that is done is serum CRAG. Serum CRAG is cryptococcal antigen test. So you look for the antigen for the cryptococcal neoformans bacteria germ that causes the cryptococcal meningitis. So you screen for it. It's about 95%. So its presence is important, so that when you find it present, you treat the patient before they can advance into the meningitis that causes severe headache, and most times the patients will die. So that is the use of cryptococcal antigen test.
That means there should be a limit to use of acronyms.
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead.
So the second question was if we consider aspergillosis as one of the possible causes of the symptoms that the patient had. Indeed, you're right, but like I said, one of the objectives was to find out non-TB etiologies that could explain the patient's symptoms. So we did as much as we can within our limitation. So we did not perform the test for aspergillosis. I know there's a test called presbytine, I think. We were not able to do that, but we did quite a number of tests. But it's a possibility for as one of the etiologies of what the patients could have had. Then the last question was why the inpatients could have died much more than the outpatients. If you saw my description of the baseline characteristics of the patients, you remember that inpatients really were very, very sick with CD4 or a median CD4 of 84 compared to the outpatients. So having a CD4 of 84 means a lot, but one of the things that would explain the text is that these patients could have had other opportunistic infections, and it's quite a whole range of opportunistic infections that you can think about, and even other diseases. Lymphoma is part of it. They could have died due to other causes that were not TB. So it's quite a range of diseases that could have, quite a range of diseases that could have explained the death, but they were quite very, very sick. Thank you.
Dr. Olajide, any questions to answer quickly?
The question is, what was the reason why public servants or civil servants did not complete higher education? From the survey, we found out that 45% of those that did not complete higher was because of transfer out. They have been self-transferred, they have been redefined the facility, and on top of these patients that transferred out, most of them were civil servants or public servants. And of course, some of them were also maybe poor adherence. The rule is that if a patient uses the drug for more than 2 months or 8 weeks, the patient has to start with it. Or less than 2 months, we increase the number of weeks the patient uses. So, however, this data is an ongoing thing. We stopped at December 2018. And of course, the grant still extends to 5 years. So, keep on collecting this down. You can factor in and explore qualitative muscle to know the reason why most of the public or civil servants are not.
Dr. Olajide, any questions for you?
Research on the service delivery as well. So thank you all for attending. Close the session now.
Thank you very much. Now it's tea break, and we'll be back here at 4:30. We'll be back 4:30, so we'll be back on schedule. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant time.